Energy transition is actually a huge opportunity for the continent, not only to transition Africa into low energy carbon sources because of the population and the growth required, but also to transit the world energy transition from that perspective.
And so when we think about energy transition and we think about it in the context of what global expectation is or what the interpretation of it is globally versus what Africans live and feel every day, that is something that I think we all need to appreciate.
There's been quite a journey for us and as a sector on this continent. We've seen a number of developments, we've seen countries embarking on net zero strategies and really putting policies and enabling environments in place to be able to reach that goal. We've seen globally more and more developments around renewable energy, but certainly a bit of a slower takeoff in Africa.
When we think about solutioning and finding global partners to solution for Africa's energy challenges, we have to do it with a lens around creating energy security for Africans. And that may mean our transition taking longer than we think it will. That may mean finding measures that are temporary in getting us along the way. As we think about the markets for electric vehicles and battery technology growing, and with that, the demand for those minerals, we suddenly see that as much as there is appetite and ability and capacity to develop energy generation for the mines and other entities, there's a real challenge around figuring out how to transmit that energy across the continent.
Interestingly, to transition to the world to low carbon, you need a lot of electricity. So there's a need to be able to invest more into electricity framework, electricity infrastructure in the continent.
It involves land, it involves people, it involves social issues. And so it requires a collaborative effort, not just between public and private sector, but really between governments and communities as well.
Most of the utilities today are being handled by government state-owned entity, and most of them are insolvent. So that creates another problem. So there's a need for policy and regulatory framework in our market.
What we find in Africa is it's not that simple. It takes longer, you need patience, you need partners to be able to develop these opportunities, and many of the challenges are directly linked to some of the sovereign challenges we experience in these countries. It's not only about FX convertibility, but also the risk allocation. More generally, we see the slow pace of rolling out enabling policies.
Africa is generally non-investment grade. The ability to be able to get financing to be able to support those projects in Africa becomes a bit more challenging. So by the time you start thinking and looking for bankability opportunities, it will become limited.
The role of government really is to create an enabling environment to allow the ability to adequately raise capital for the investment in capital projects. Partnering with the private sector who has got capacity, who has got access to capital, who has got technical expertise, is really the recipe for the long-term ability to roll out successful infrastructure.
There's always opportunities in Africa, and I think what we've seen is the innovative thinking. We have clients developing opportunities in very challenging markets.
Africa isn't short of renewable energy resource, and it's not short of natural resource. And so that context is really important because there is still a gap between the type of support available and the type of projects that really need support on the continent. What we can learn though from international precedent is how quickly it can be done, how well government and private sector can work together, how the ability to use technology that's been tested elsewhere in the world allows Africa to leapfrog its own development journey.
Especially when we come to gas, there's huge opportunity to be able to do energy transition projects in Namibia. There are huge opportunity to do that in Botswana. Nigeria has more gas than oil, and access to electricity is actually very low in that country. Malawi today is generating close to 70% of their energy, from low carbon sources. Kenya has done a great job, making sure that most of the energy sources are from low carbon element.
What we've seen specifically in South Africa is a move towards opening up of the power markets. So what we do is we look at opportunities to support generation projects feeding and selling power through through an aggregator model combined with power trading to be able to sell to multiple buyers. What remains important is that you have the necessary policies and enabling environment within that risk framework. And we've certainly seen through some of these developments that it is being driven in a more positive manner.
One of the things we're actually doing as a team to make sure that we're engaging both the policymakers, we are there to facilitate those projects, and we are also working to ensure that we can provide support and ensure that some of those projects can actually come to life so that electricity will be more available for more Africa going forward.
When we look at our clients, it's not only about finding a quick solution, but a more sustainable solution. And in order to do that in the power sector, you have to drive a holistic approach. So it's not only about solving for the home solar solution provider, but also for the industrial player and for the portfolio players.
I think it's important for us to think about it beyond just generating renewable energy electrons. We have to think about it in the context of its social impact, its environmental impact, and in that is a big economic development story. And economic development really talks to upliftment of Africans.
So Standard Bank is committed clearly to energy transition, and we're taking it to highest level, not only for South Africa, but the entire African region.